to our fourth local content conference. I'm sure for many of you it's surprised that we've done this 4 times. This is something that we've really been keen on supporting because we view it as one of the key catalysts for the country. And for a number of reasons. Uganda is going through a difficult stretch right now. After 2 decades of 8% growth, between 1990 and 2010, we grew at a compounded annual growth of 8%, which was remarkable. We were what I call the golden years. We were one of the top performers in the African continent, in the world actually. But after 2012, we sort of lost our way, and we started growing at 4.5%, 5%, which is still good, but it's not good enough for Uganda because we have a population growth of 3.5%. Growing at 5% doesn't really move the needle. In fact, if you look at our income per capita growth, it's less than 1% for the last 5 years. So yes, we're growing, but we're not moving. So we are very fortunate that we've gotten this catalyst that's coming through, which is the oil and gas. And I believe that it provides an opportunity to get back to our 9, 10% growth numbers and to really start to develop or basically improve our livelihood by increasing our income per capita. But getting that right requires a number of things. And when I was analyzing the oil and gas sector, and I used 3 Ps, I don't want to bore you, but it's consulting speak, but there are 3 Ps that I thought were key to the pillar of getting the sector right. So one is policy, the second P is political will, the third P is partnerships. Now, I believe that the policy exists. I think Uganda has taken their time to get oil and gas going. So I believe they've borrowed heavily on policy that works elsewhere. So the policy is there, it's in place. It's unlikely to change very much. So that's a given. There is political will, for sure. I think if you look at the entire ministry, the cabinet, I've sat on a number of roundtables with all the senior leadership in the country, and oil and gas is a place that has the political will, it has the coverage to make it work. Now, to the third P, and I think that is why we're here this morning, which is partnerships. I believe we're failing miserably. And if there's one thing that I would like to take away from this morning is to have a real discussion on how we improve our ability to harness the partnerships in this sector. There's no doubt that $10 billion is going to be spent in this sector. Money exists, the capital is coming, we've got the right stakeholders. The money will be spent. The issue is what is going to be the piece of the pie that we get on that $10 billion. And I'm Ugandan, so I can say this, but Ugandans have a tendency to think that the pie is fixed and that you should just quickly grab your piece and run. And I want us to think differently about how we do this, because the pie is not fixed, the pie can actually get bigger. And I'll give you an example. We've done some analysis around the energy sector, and we look at Karuma and Isimba. A lot of government money is being spent on the power and infrastructure. So $2.5 billion has been spent on the energy in the hydro power plants. That's a lot of money for Uganda. Guess how much of that was localized out of the $2.5 billion? Any guesses? Nope. Less than 10, 6%. But let me round up to 7. 7% was localized. That's about $150 million. It's actually less than the interest we're paying on the money we borrowed to build a power plant in the first place. Do you see the disconnect? There's something very wrong with us. So how, and this is not an issue that is because there isn't the political will, nor is there no policy, because it's actually now been even written that you must. It's only going to be developed if we acknowledge where our shortcomings are and reach out for help on the partnerships. There's no shortage of people who come through my office looking for partnerships in oil and gas. But frankly, I have no mechanism, and I was just chatting earlier with a few of other colleagues. How do we get to this level where the matchmaking works? Where, you know, a couple of Nigerian oil and gas service providers show up in Entebbe, they know exactly where to go, they can get the information they need, and they can go back within a week with some idea of what they're going to do next, who they might partner with, where the gaps are, who their banks might be, who their lawyers are. We just don't have that capacity. So if there's one thing we can get away from today is how do we get a better matchmaking level so that we get the partnerships right? Oil and gas is a new sector for us. We have very little capacity except, frankly, on the government side where there's a lot of knowledge. I think we have the best policy makers in the sector, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about how to get this done. But in the private sector, we have a very, very long, hard journey ahead of us. So I would just pose that and hope that by the end of today, we'd have gotten at least some framework or some ground rules on how we can harness local content in the sector. Thanks for listening and thanks for coming. Sorry, I'd forgotten one of my duties. It is my pleasure now to invite the ED, Mr. Ernest Rubondo, to come and make his remarks. Thank you. I'll not use the laptop.
You want to use your presentation?
Yeah, my colleague is coming too.
Thank you very much, Patrick. My colleagues and friends here, it's always a pleasure to meet the people who are contributing to the development of the oil and gas sector in Uganda. So the Managing Director and staff from Stanbic Bank, the Association of Oil and Gas Service Providers, Deloitte, Max, representatives of the licensed oil companies, local service providers here, members of Parliament. I understand there are some diplomats, my colleagues on the public sector, and our friend visiting from Nigeria, who is the resource person. On my own behalf, and on behalf of the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, I welcome everybody to this 4th Stanbic Bank Local Content Conference. Thank you for inviting the Petroleum Authority of Uganda to give opening remarks at this very important event. The Petroleum Authority of Uganda is the regulator of Uganda's oil and gas sector. And honestly speaking, when we heard about this conference, we thought it was a great opportunity for the authority. So we had planned to attend this event as observers so that we could appreciate the plans and efforts which the different potential oil and gas service providers in the country are making or have put in place, and the enthusiasm with which they are being done, so that this could enable us prepare and plan our regulation of the sector in a manner that enables us to achieve national content. This is important, especially because the authority has to efficiently plan for its work. We were subsequently invited to make these opening remarks, so we are delighted to do so, and we will continue that role of observing as we had planned to do, so that we can collectively do this job of achieving national content for Uganda. We therefore thank Stanbic Bank and all the other organizers of this event for organizing this event, to which we are definitely going to benefit from as an authority, because we are going to get the information that we had planned for literally without sweat, because we would have had to organize this event ourselves. We note the invitation of our colleague from Nigeria as a resource person at this event, and his experience from a country that has been through the journey of national content, which Uganda, literally speaking, is only beginning. We have been to Nigeria a few times. We have benefited from their experience. It's nice now that they are coming here to actually share their experience directly. I must say that we have also been to other countries, but the ones that are in Africa, we find that they are very relevant to us because of the other basic facts that are similar that we have with them. So I thank the organizers for inviting Mr. Tamuno and for his accepting to come. We look forward to your presentation and the interaction we're going to have with you. The gathering at this event, we note that is multi-stakeholder. We note that there are potential goods and service providers. There are institutions preparing Ugandans to provide goods and services. There are policymakers. There is civil society and others. The coming together of these diverse stakeholders to forge a way forward in how best our country can deal with the opportunities in its oil and gas sector is genuinely admirable and will no doubt contribute immensely to the efforts of achieving the desirable levels of national participation in the oil and gas sector. Many of you are aware of the saying which goes that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. If the service providers get all the money they need to do service provision from Stanbic Bank, but they do not have people who are skilled, we will not achieve the national participation that we desire. If the training institution train all the people and give them the necessary skills, but the service providers are unable to take them, we will still not achieve national content. If the public sector prepares the best policies around the world and puts them in place, but there are no service providers, there are no funds, there are no trained people, we will still not get anywhere. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very important that we appreciate our individual importance in this process, but recognize that success will only come through a collective effort. If you see government sweating to do good policies, please throw in the effort that you can. If government sees the service providers battling to try and get some money, it needs to give them the best effort it can. If the service providers see training institutions struggling to bring certification institutions in the country, please give them the effort they can. Because it is only if we do it collectively that we will be able to succeed as a country on the aspect of national content. The MD did make mention of the dismal participation of Ugandans in the